The key felt heavier than it should, rusted iron pressing into her palm like a secret begging to be told. When Clara inherited the Sunset Motel from her estranged grandmother, she expected dust and faded wallpaper, not a locked room at the end of the hallway with no mention in the deed. The first clue was tucked behind the front desk. A 1948 newspaper clipping with a circled ad for the motel's grand opening, the edges brittle with age. Inside the room, once she jimmied the stubborn lock, lay a shoebox of Kodachrome slides. Holding them up to the cracked window light, Clara saw her grandmother, young and laughing, arm in arm with a man who wasn't her grandfather. Beneath the slides, a postcard from New Orleans, dated 1952, addressed to L, in shaky script. "I'll wait by the fountain. Forgive me." The motel's ledger, buried under moth-eaten blankets, held the final piece, pages of payments from a Lawrence T. stopping every June from 1949 to 1963. Room 12. The same room Clara now stood in, its walls whispering decades of silence. She traced the faded roses on the wallpaper, realizing the truth. This wasn't just a forgotten place. It was a monument to a love her grandmother had buried, and to the forgiveness she'd never allowed herself to receive. The last key, it turned out, wasn't for the door. It was for the story she'd been brave enough to uncover. The room smelled of old wood and something faintly sweet, lavender, maybe, lingering from decades past. Clara ran her fingers along the dresser, its surface scratched and worn, and found a small drawer that stuck when she tried to open it. Inside was a single pearl earring, its mate nowhere to be found. She held it up, wondering who had last touched it, and why it had been left behind. The earring felt like another whisper from the past, another piece of the puzzle. Outside, the motel's neon sign flickered, casting long shadows across the floor. Clara sat on the edge of the bed, the mattress sagging beneath her, and stared at the slides spread out before her. Each one was a frozen moment in time, a glimpse into a life she'd never known her grandmother had lived. The man in the photos had a kind face, his smile easy and warm. Clara couldn't help but wonder what had happened between them, and why her grandmother had never spoken of him. The postcard's message echoed in her mind. Forgive me. Had her grandmother ever forgiven him? Or herself? The ledger's entries told a story of their own. Lawrence T. had come every June, without fail, for 14 years. Room 12, always room 12. Clara imagined him standing in this very spot, waiting for a woman who might never come. The thought made her chest ache. She opened the closet, half expecting to find more clues, but it was empty except for a single hanger and a faint scent of cedar. The walls seemed to hum with untold stories, and Clara knew she was only scratching the surface. The motel was more than a building, it was a vault of secrets, and she was the first person in decades to listen. She found a small notebook tucked under the mattress, its pages yellowed with age. The handwriting was her grandmother's, but the words were unlike anything Clara had ever heard her say. "I miss you every day," one entry read. "I wish I'd been brave enough to choose you." Clara's hands trembled as she turned the pages, each one a confession, a regret, a love letter to a life that might have been. The notebook ended abruptly, the last entry dated June 1963, the same year Lawrence T.'s payments stopped. Clara felt a chill run down her spine. What had happened that summer? Had her grandmother finally closed the door on this chapter of her life, or had something else intervened? The room seemed to hold its breath, as if waiting for her to piece it all together. She returned to the shoebox, sifting through the slides once more, and noticed something she'd missed before, a small, folded photograph at the bottom. It showed her grandmother and Lawrence standing in front of the motel, their arms around each other, the sign above them bright and new. On the back, in her grandmother's handwriting, "Our beginning." Clara's throat tightened. This wasn't just a fling or a passing romance, it had been something real, something lasting. And yet, it had been hidden away, locked behind a door for decades. She thought of her grandfather, a stern man she'd never really known, and wondered what role he'd played in all of this. Had he known about Lawrence? Had he been T?